OmegaMetroid.com is here. We're so proud to finally share our website with you, giving Metroid fans a dedicated Metroid one-stop shop for the latest news, fan creations, walkthroughs, maps, and of course, the latest episodes of the Omega Metroid podcast. That's not all. If you'd rather listen on YouTube, you can check out episodes there. And if you really want to take your Omega Metroid experience to the next level, consider supporting us on Patreon. You'll get access to special Discord roles, a platform on the website to promote your projects, exclusive bonus shows, and so much more. Memberships start at just as little as $1 a month. OmegaMetroid.com is the source of all this great content. So whether you're a new Metroid fan or a series veteran, OmegaMetroid.com is the place for you. Check out OmegaMetroid.com today.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Omega Metroid podcast from OmegaMetroid.com. My name is Andy Spiteri, reunited with Kiwi Talkz. Kiwi, how are you, my friend? We're across the world from each other, but this beautiful series bringing us together. Good to have you back on the show.
Likewise. I wish it hadn't been over other M, but hey, it's okay.
You know what? After this show, you mark my words, buddy. You're gonna be like, wow, this was great, and I would play this game that you have constructed for me.
Okay.
I guarantee you're going to say that.
Okay, that's pretty confident stuff. So we'll see.
I feel pretty confident. I'm not going to lie. So we have a really special show today, and yes, we are talking about the most controversial, talked about, never out of the conversation Metroid game, Metroid Other M, and I think that maybe before we get to the gist of today's show, which is essentially rewriting the game's story while using the same basic premise to make it a much more complete narrative, I think that we should touch back on some comments that came out from earlier this week where, Reggie Fils-Aimé has been doing his press tour for his new book, Disrupting the Game, which, by the way, I started reading last night. Have you had a chance to read that at all, Kiwi?
I've read some of it. I plan on listening to the whole audiobook when I go to India, probably late next month, so I'll probably do the whole thing then. But yeah, it's good. It's really good so far.
It's really good, but I don't know. It's definitely more of like a book on how to succeed in business versus like a book that I think a lot of Nintendo fans might have been hoping for, where it's like, we're looking for secrets about Nintendo developmental and stuff. There is a little bit of that from what I've read so far, but it's mostly just a book on how to approach the world of business and just kind of navigating your way through that. But still a very fascinating read, I would say.
Yeah.
Definitely worth picking up.
I think so. And to be perfectly honest, business and management will probably help you more in your day-to-day life than finding out all Nintendo secrets. So
oh, totally.
Yeah. So I'd still read it or listen to it, depending on
There's a lot of people that wanted the dirt, so there's not really a whole lot of dirt in this book, unfortunately, but there is a lot of like just really kind of cool insight from arguably one of like the most prolific like president CEOs that I can think of in the last 15 years. So obviously not the most, but I think he's up there. But yeah, so while Reggie was doing his press tour and promoting his book, he showed up on the Kinda Funny Gamecast, and they were talking about some titles that maybe didn't quite land the way that that everyone had anticipated. And actually, Reggie brought up Metroid Other M kind of unannounced. He brought it up himself. And actually, the exact quote was hilarious. He's like, I don't know if you remember that game, because I think that everybody remembers that game. But I'm going to read you the quote here, Kiwi, and I want you to kind of react and give your 2 cents to what he said. So,
Yeah, sure.
Reggie said, quote, I really thought that this was going to be a defining moment for the Metroid franchise. It was giving much more of a perspective about Samus. I really thought that was going to be a killer moment in the franchise's history, and it wasn't. It didn't deliver, not the business result. It really didn't touch the player we hoped it would. Interestingly, I was in a large group meeting, a strategy meeting with Iwata and Miyamoto and the game developers, and we talked about why not. I was always the brash American. I was the one who would say what I believed was truth and try to help the business move forward. The point I made to the developers was it took too long to get to the meat and potatoes of the game. The first 5 hours of the game you kind of plodded around. There wasn't a lot of payoff, there wasn't a lot of dialogue, and I'm sure I pissed people off in the room. But the learning here was that the player wants to get into this much faster. What do you make of that reflection from Reggie? First of all, on the fact that he thought, as did it seems a lot of other people, that this would be a big moment for the series.
Well, he's not wrong.
Second of all, well, he's not wrong. Definitely not. So react to the first part and then react to what he thought was the game's biggest problem, because I think that I'm not sure that either of us agree with that.
No, there's elements of it that I would say are on the right track, but when you talk about defining moment or killer moment, probably not the best words to use, because yes, they were those things, but in the wrong context. It was a defining moment, and it kind of killed the franchise for a period of time, or it seemed like it killed the franchise. And I think there's a lot bigger issues than merely just the pacing at the beginning of the game and not getting into the nitty gritty of it. There's so many more problems than that. But I will say Reggie is pretty good at spin. He was always good at that when he was in charge of Nintendo of America. Like if you watch journalists and how they try to trap him, he'd always be able to flip it, spin it. He would have been a good lawyer.
Well, hey, that's true. I agree with you. I agree because I think you know what? I wonder Kiwi if I wonder if Reggie and all those guys were sold on the premise of Other M and not really the actual what we know the game to be. Because I have always maintained I think that the premise of Other M isn't really that bad. I think it's actually kind of an interesting premise. And I wonder if they were sold on that premise, and that's why everyone had such confidence in the game. Because, I think that, I don't know, it seems almost unfathomable that everyone was just yeah, this is awesome, and this is what Metroid players want, and this is going to elevate the franchise and stuff like that. It's really, I don't know. It almost seems like, what game were you looking at? Because you weren't looking at the Other M that we know. But I think maybe if they were just fed the premise of the game, then maybe they could arrive at that conclusion. But
I don't think they
agree
did.
with you.
Yeah, I don't think they did though. I don't think they were sold the premise because, and this goes from talking to various developers, right? Particularly at Nintendo. So Nintendo usually works on prototypes. So they actually prototype gameplay first before a premise or a story or anything. That actually comes later in the process. So in this case, they would have been sold on something gameplay related, is my thinking. Like maybe Sakamoto had an idea, but Team Ninja would have done something in terms of like some sort of prototype, right? Because if you think about even Mercury Steam, they sold Sakamoto on a Fusion remake demo, from what I understand.
Right.
Yeah. So I don't know what that prototype was, and if it was sold on a premise, that's even worse.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, what you said makes sense. You're probably right. Where, yeah, I could just see them pitching the idea that we're gonna play this game with a sideways Wiimote, and I don't know. I guess the sales pitch must have been good. Put it that way. But where I disagree with Reggie, he says that he believes the issue is that the game took too long to get going, and that there was a lot of plotting and waiting around. I don't necessarily disagree with that, in that the opening of the game does feel like it takes a long time to get to, But I think that the real problem there, if you peel the onion back a little bit deeper, is that in the first 5 hours, there's just like a lot of really questionable dialogue and character decisions and stuff like that, and that immediately puts players on kind of like this, I don't know, defensive, or just like it disorientates them, because it's like, what? Who is this? Is this a Samus I know? Or and you know, even that setting with a lot of the cutscenes and stuff like that was very foreign. So I guess, you know, on one hand I do disagree with him, but I think it was more to do with like the actual content within the opening 5 hours that was so off-putting for players. Because I think if you delivered like good cutscenes, engaging characters, storyline beats, etc., you might have something there. But I don't know. It's interesting to hear his assessment, because I don't know really that I agree with him, but I can't say that I like completely disagree with him either. But pacing to me wasn't the big issue for Metroid Other M.
Well, even if there was pacing issues, like Twilight Princess has terrible pacing, but it's still a good game.
Horrible. Thank you for saying that, by the way. God, the opening to that game, if you had never played Twilight Princess, you are in Ordon Village for like 3 hours, I bet you.
Yeah.
Outrageous.
Totally. So pacing can be an issue. But I remember playing the game and thinking, okay, this is going to get better at some point. And I just kept playing, and I'm like, nope, it's not getting better. This is still lame. So, yeah, pacing is part of the issue. But then I'm also wondering what Reggie's thought process is in terms of the Metroid franchise and what it represents. Like, I'm wondering, did he get time to play it before it even got released? Or did he just get it at the end?
I don't know. That's a good question. I think that, you know, I think that for me, I'm going to be a little bit more kind to Other M, because there is a point where I feel like the game actually gets like kind of fun, and that's kind of the point at the end of the game when you have almost all of your items and you're going back and sweeping the board and collecting all your missiles and stuff like that. And conversely, that's the point in the game where you don't really have a lot of story going on. Like, the story is mostly done and it's mostly like taken place already. But yeah, it is interesting because, like, again, I don't think that the idea of diving into the character of Samus and what makes her tick is like a bad idea. It's just that I think that the execution wasn't there. So that's where I can see, like, if they were sold on this premise, like, we're gonna you know, dive into the psyche of Samus and her emotional state after the planet Zebes and explore that. Like, I actually don't think that sounds horrible. It's just like, you know, you can say that you're gonna do it, but then you have to do it well, and I'm not sure that they did.
Yeah, and with a character like Samus that had very little backstory, the problem is with that is players in their own mind have their own interpretation of what Samus should be. So I think with that sort of thing, you have to roll out her personality slowly over various games rather than just going, wham, here's her entire backstory and personality and everything that she is. Because I remember playing that and I was like, this is not Samus at all. And I'm like, this is just some lame knockoff attempt at trying to emulate Samus.
I think the most offensive part for me was the Ridley cutscene.
Oh, that was horrible.
And that was really bad, but like it was bad because it didn't have to be bad. Like, again, like, I don't think that the thought process behind Samus being like terrified, I guess, for lack of a better word, that this arch rival of hers that she finally thought was defeated forever is back. Like, I don't think that's like the worst premise either, but the way that it was executed is just like, man, this is really rough, you know? And I'm not saying that, like, I don't know. I agree with you where, like, when I first played Metroid Fusion, it was a little bit startling to see Samus talk so much. Because, you know, I'd grown up with Super Metroid, Metroid 2. But, yeah, I don't know. I think that they could have done it in a good way, but I feel like they just kind of took a wrong step at every possible point that they could.
Yeah, they should have zagged. They should have zagged when they zigged.
Yes, exactly. But Kiwi, my friend, I'm gonna zig today.
Okay.
Because I rewrote the entire story of Metroid Other M within the same premise. So I didn't really rewrite it. A lot of the elements are very, very similar, but I zigged instead of zagged, and I think that I've come to a better overall story. So I'm gonna read you my story here, and you can kind of chime in whenever you want, cut me off, and say like if you're buying this, if you're selling this. But I think that using the parameters that Other M has laid out, I think that this story is the best that it could possibly be. And I know that there's people out there that are just like, well, the best way to do the story is to not have it told, or the best way to do it is to like completely change the setting. But I feel like that's part of the challenge, and what made it a little bit fun is like taking the, salvaging this story out of the framework that Other M laid out. So,
Okay.
I guess, are you ready? Are you ready to hear what I have come up for you, my friend?
I'm scared, but I'm optimistic at the same time. This is your moment to shine, Andy.
I should probably get no pressure. I should probably say, have you seen the movie Alien?
Yes, of course.
Okay. I was going to say, I feel like we've all probably seen Alien. Well, we actually did a podcast last week about Alien, and it's probably no surprise that I ripped off a lot of Alien for this premise of Other M. Because, I mean, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? And Metroid has already kind of ripped off a lot of what Alien was doing. So, that being said, you can definitely tell that I wrote this after watching Alien for last week's show. But I'm going to give you the general premise, I think, of Other M. And you can tell me if you think that this is, like, the premise or not. But this is the premise that I worked with. So, The premise of Other M goes like this. Samus, emotionally reeling following the events of Zebes, answers a distress call on a mysterious Galactic Federation ship where she meets her old commanding officer and learns of a sinister conspiracy involving Galactic Federation-made biological weapons, all while dealing with a traitor amongst the ranks trying to keep the conspiracy a secret. Does that sound like a fair summarization of the premise to Other M?
Yes, yep, I would agree.
Okay. So, boiling it down to that sentence, we're going to go back from 100 yards, and we are going to rewrite some of the key mistakes. I'm excited here, and I hope I can convince you to buy this game at the end of it. And by the way, let's just assume, okay, because I'm talking about like general story beats, but like let's just assume that the acting is good and the voice acting is good, and you know what I mean? Like, let's just assume that stuff is at least passable, okay?
Okay.
So,
I'm trying to imagine that, and it's quite hard.
Yeah, because I mean, like, even my story draft, if we have, and I have never met her, I've never talked to her, I'm sure she's a nice lady, but if we have Jessica Martin doing the same kind of voiceover work as she did, as she was instructed to do, let me be clear, for Metroid Other M, this probably isn't going to work. But so let's just assume that, this is a quality recording. But let's get this game started off. And you know what? We are going to change something right away off the very bat. Because one thing that I do not like about Metroid Other M is that Samus randomly bumping into Adam feels way too random, way too coincidental. So we are going to manufacture this meeting. So we're going to start this game off. And Samus, she's going to be alone in her ship, okay? And she is going to be quietly reflecting of the loss of the baby Metroid and wondering if family is something that she can ever have, or if she has just chosen a life that constantly puts her by herself. And in this moment, she calls a former commanding officer, a father figure to her, Adam Malkovich. And Adam answers, and he is out on a top secret mission. And they have kind of a nice chat, and this is where you can see a flashback that will detail the history of Adam and Samus and their relationship, and then they can just end the call. Shortly after, Adam will send Samus a distress missile that says, SOS, don't trust anyone, and the coordinates of the bottle ship. And that is how Samus lands on the bottle ship. So, or that's how she learns where the bottle ship is. So, we have fixed a problem already where they just randomly meet, and now we have a reason and a purpose for that. And we can get the backstory going at the same time. What do you think so far? Are you with me here?
Some parts. I'm already getting a bit of a. Ooh, I'm not sure. This meeting between Adam and Samus initially. We obviously. I'm guessing this is an intro cutscene.
I think that this could be an intro cutscene.
Okay,
yeah.
how long are these cutscenes?
Well, this is kind of what I mean when I say, like, let's just assume that the writing is good and, like, the performance is good. Because I think that you can get this across in, like, I don't know, like, not a reasonable amount of time, right? Because, like, you just have a few quiet minutes of Samus, and then she video calls Adam, and he answers, and then they chat for a minute. So, like, I don't know, maybe, let's say 5 minutes tops, which I feel like isn't that outrageous to start a video game.
Yeah.
Even a Metroid game.
The problem is because Adam is not involved at all in Super Metroid. It's like, where was he all before this?
Well,
during Samus Returns, don't know about him.
Sure.
Zero Mission, you never hear about him. So it just seems pretty random. Hey, I'm just going to call this guy that I never called before at Super Metroid or Samus Returns. I'm trying not to say Metroid too.
Hey, listen, I don't disagree. I don't disagree inherently, but he's part of the framework of Other M, so we gotta include him. Keep him in. And what we can do is, like, one thing that Other M did establish is that him and Samus had a falling out after what happened with Adam's brother. What was his name? Ian Malkovich or something like that. So
I don't even remember. That's how lame it was.
Okay, so for everyone that doesn't remember, Adam ordered, like, the self-destruct of a ship or something that his own brother was on because it was to save the lives of everyone else. So we can relay that, and Samus can say, like, we had this falling out, we haven't talked in years, but I feel like after the loss of this baby Metroid, I want some semblance of a family, and this guy's the closest thing I have to family, so I at least want to call him. I think that that's, like, an okay premise.
Okay, yes.
Okay, so let's continue here. So Samus is in her ship, and she's preparing to land on the bottle ship, and all of a sudden, the bottle ship's defense turrets start firing on her, damaging the ship, and causing Samus to crash hard onto the bottle ship. And guess what? This strips Samus of all of her powers. Now, I know that the whole, like, we've crashed and Samus loses all of her powers is a little bit old hat. But I mean, like, this beats the hell out of the authorization gimmick.
Totally,
right? Like,
totally. And I'm down for that. Like, that's the least important part. Like, her losing her abilities. It's about,
I know, Jack has kind of made a little bit of a big deal, but come on.
I mean, there's worse things to focus on than that. Yeah, she loses her abilities, but yeah.
I just, like,
it's like Zelda always being rescued in every game. It's just one of those things that's just staple of the series.
Like, I think that the authorization thing was one of the most offensive things about Other M. I really do. Because it was just, like, it doesn't make any sense, like, how she wouldn't. There's that one scene where Anthony's getting beat up by the fire boss, and it's like, you have your what, I don't even remember what power up it was, but it's like, use it.
I think it was super missile, wasn't it? I can't remember, but it was like so bad. It was so bad. I was thinking there was no really logical thought to this. Either Sakamoto had a whole bunch of yes men, and he was like, yes, this is a great idea, and everyone just agreed with him, or they really did not think this thing through in terms of the authorization thing. That I am totally on board with that. That is one of the worst aspects of that game.
I thought it was horrible. And then, like, at the end of the game when Samus just, like, authorizes her own screw attack use, it's just like, this is bad. Like, this whole idea was just not a good idea. So I know that there might be some people rolling their eyes about Samus losing her abilities at the beginning of the game, but guess what? I think it's better than authorization. And, like, one of the things about Other M is that whenever you beat a boss, you really don't acquire anything.
Yeah.
Like, you don't get anything.
Totally.
So I think that this also helps with that.
Yeah, I mean, when I spoke to Mike Wicken, right, he talked about gameplay ramping. So once you beat a boss, you get a new item, and then you're able to play around with that item for a bit. If you beat a boss and there's nothing that you get, you don't attain anything, you don't feel like you've earned anything, then it's kind of lame.
I totally agree. And you know what? I didn't plan out this story draft to incorporate gameplay very much, but if you really wanted to, I mean, you're on a Galactic Federation ship that's making weapons. Like, you could download the stuff like you do in Fusion, or you could find it. Just kind of, you know what? Whatever. Like, as anything, I think would be better than authorization. I really do.
Totally, I agree.
Okay, so Samus has crash landed. Her ship needs some time to self-repair, and eventually she finds up and meets Adam's strike team. So, Adam tells her, he pulls her aside, and he says, listen, someone tripped off the self-destruct sequence on our own ship, so they are stranded on the bottle ship. Adam suspects foul play and confides in Samus that he thinks that the traitor is amongst his ranks. Samus codenames this traitor the Deleter. So I don't know about you, Kiwi, but I really liked the Deleter storyline.
Yeah.
I thought that was a cool gimmick from Other M, and it was another one that was never really followed up on. It had no payoff, but I'm going to give it some payoff in my story. But I thought that was a cool story thread. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I actually do. I totally forgot about it, but yes, it was a good story thread. It's just, yeah, there was no payoff. Nothing even happened at the end. I think, who is the Deleter? I can't even remember who the Deleter was.
Exactly. They never explicitly say who the Deleter was. They infer that it was James Pierce, but they never outright say it, and you don't really get to fight him, and he's killed off screen, and it sucks.
Yeah.
There's no other way to say it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but don't you worry, Kiwi. We're gonna have some good times with the Deleter here.
That's a classic example of good idea, bad execution.
Yes, totally, 100% agree.
Yeah.
So Samus's ship needs time for auto repairs. Adam's ship has been blown up. They are stranded on this clearly hostile ship, and with nothing else, with no other options, they decide to press forward on their mission, which Adam will not share what it is. This is a top secret mission. So what we can do here, and keep in mind, this is in the opening segment of the game, right? So it's still very early. But what we can do is at least get to see a little bit of Adam's team before they're all killed. Because I think that almost everybody doesn't make it out. So we can get to know James a little bit. We can get to know the other guy, I don't even remember, Lyle, a little bit. Anthony, of course, we know quite well. And Adam. And I think there's another guy that I can't even remember his name. But, these guys are obviously going to be, a lot of them are here to be killed. So at least we can know them a little bit so that we care, slightly about them. I go back and I'm watching Alien last week, and it's you didn't know, a lot of the characters super, super well, but well enough that it was oh man, I don't want Captain Dallas to die, or I didn't want the alien to get this guy or whatever. So I think that just a little scene would go a long way with this unit as well. Because to your point, it's which one is a Deleter? Who is, what is anyone's name here, right?
And one of the good things about Alien is you have the camaraderie between all the people on the ship, right? So
yeah.
And that's where dialogue is quite important. So you need to have, you have those story threads, but if you have multiple people interacting with each other, that's a good way to show that person, and it gives the player a chance to attach themselves or identify with the character. So you definitely need to, and the thing is with video games over film is you're not confined to, say, 2 hours. You've got a period of however long the game is. I think Metroid Other M is 20 hours? I think.
I mean, maybe if you're playing for the first, I'd say you could.
If you weren't speed running it, if you were just taking your time with it, not even getting 100% all collectibles, but 10 to 20 hours, maybe 15 somewhere, and you could kill off the characters within the first 5, maybe. I agree. And I think one other thing that I would do as well is really kind of lean into what's the word I'm looking for? Not
not stereotype, but like the archetype. Like this guy is like the hacker, you know. This guy is the weapons guy.
Yes.
This guy is the sniper, or like something like that. Like have them like very clearly like this is what they do on this team. This is who they are. So like even if you don't necessarily remember Lyle's name, you're just like, okay, well like this guy is the sharpshooter or something like that, right?
Yeah, I agree. Sharpshooter. Nice Bret Hart reference. I like it. Anyway, keep going.
You know, I just did a Patreon episode talking about some Bret Hart matches, BT dubs.
Nice.
Virtualtheater.com. Yeah, check it out. So I think that the team together proceeds a little bit further ahead, and eventually you can get to like your first boss in the game or something like that. And then something happens and the team is forced to split up. Or maybe they get divided or separated somehow. But it's obviously very early on in the game. We can still be in communication with Adam and some of the other team members every now and then. But this is how you segue Samus by herself and really kind of start to have this feel like a more traditional Metroid game. But I do think that, you know, you could... You know the opening of Super Metroid where there's no enemies or anything and it's kind of creepy, and then when you get the Morph Ball, all the enemies come out? I think you could almost do that in Metroid Other M. You have no enemies until you get to the first boss. So like you have the entire team with you. You're getting to know them a little bit. There's some camaraderie there. Something happens. The team splits up. Samus is by herself. Now we're ready to really rock and kick this Metroid game off.
Okay, but from a story perspective, why would that happen? Why would there be no enemies and then there'd be enemies? Like with Super Metroid, it makes sense, right? She infiltrates the planet and nobody's there, and then she activates the alarm light thing when she gets the Morph Ball, and then it makes sense from a story perspective.
I didn't get that far, but we could probably put in like some kind of alarm clock or something like that. I think I could think of a scenario where we could make sense of that, but I have to admit I didn't make it that far. But I don't think that it's like a impossible, or maybe I don't know, maybe there could be enemies and you're just like blitzing through them like super fast or whatever. I'm just trying to think of the logistics, because I want Samus to be a playable character during this, but also to have like the team members kind of in and around her. So I don't know how all that combat would work if like the enemies were there. Maybe they could do it and it would be fine and whatever. But I think that the important thing is that we proceed as a team for a little bit, and then we get split up. And I think that that's when the game like really kind of gets going.
Yeah, you just need to organize the pacing of it, right? Because with Super Metroid, you literally start, bang, within like a minute, you're fighting Ridley. And then obviously the self-destruct sequence, and then you like Super Metroid's pacing is unparalleled. It's perfect, right? So you just have to make sure that you get, because those first few hours, this is where Reggie was right. They're critical. They're very critical in terms of, because there's some games where I don't even make it past the first 3 hours because I'm like, I'm done. And I came so close to giving up on Twilight Princess because of that, but I'm like, no, it's Zelda, so I'll push through this. But yeah, you've got to have good pacing. So you'd need to somehow, I don't know if you implemented a boss before you even got to where she meets up with the rest of the team or something.
I mean, like maybe like this, like I said, like I didn't focus on the gameplay so much. Like I feel like that's kind of like a 50-foot thing, and I'm operating at 100 feet out. So I'm digging what you're saying here so far. Like I think that there's definitely room to like hone in and like really fine tune and structure here. But I think the end point that we want to get at is everybody is separate. So the next couple story points I have here are, these can be like cutscenes that are intermittent throughout the Metroid game. So like 30-second cutscenes or whatever. So like let's just say that like, I don't know, 5 or 6 hours has passed in this game, like of gameplay, and we're treated to these cutscenes that are interspliced in here. So there's two key things that I want to focus on. First, we meet Little Birdie. Okay, so the little white chicken thing with the big tongue or whatever. We're gonna keep Little Birdie in the story, and we're gonna make him cool. Okay. So there could be a couple different cutscenes where you see Little Birdie, and then you start to watch it metamorphise. And one thing that I actually, I've listened to Dak and a lot of people say that, like, they hate that they made Ridley a Pokemon, and I get it. I understand that, because it's not great, but I think that, like, it's not, again, I think that the idea isn't the worst idea, especially after watching Alien, where, like, you start off with this little face hugger, and then it bursts out of the chest, and then it grows, and it grows into this incredible xenomorph. So I'm basically going to copy that exact premise for Little Birdie, where we're going to see a couple different cutscenes, and we're going to present it as a evolving face hugger. So we can see it eating and being creepy and stuff like that, shedding its skin, and then we can eventually see it make its final metamorphosis into, this is my code name, Kiwi, don't laugh, Xeno Ridley. Okay, so imagine this, like, big Alien-esque monster that kind of looks like Ridley. Now, here's what we absolutely 100% critically need to do. We need to make sure that this game emphasizes that this is not Ridley. This is a clone of Ridley. It's not Ridley proper. To me, I thought that was very confusing, because I was like, oh, Ridley's alive, and he just like, is this like a new Ridley, or is this Ridley reborn or something? I think you need to absolutely make it 100% clear this is a clone of Ridley, and it's not even the same species, but it's the Galactic Federation replicating Ridley as close as they can.
I think
What do you think about that?
Ridley is only in that game for two reasons. One, they wanted to just shoehorn him in, and two, they needed to find some way of connecting it to Metroid Fusion, in terms of Ridley being on, what is it called? The BSL, yeah. Yeah. So how they came up with the idea of Little Birdie, I somewhat agree with Dak in terms of turning him into a Pokemon. So yeah, that could work. That could work. I mean, you're stuck in this position where you have to have him there now, because you have to make that story work. They wrote themselves into a corner by putting Ridley in Metroid Fusion. Yes.
I'm going to be honest with you. I think that Ridley being in Metroid Fusion isn't, like, a big deal at all.
Oh, no.
I think that you didn't need to address that. Like, no, like, the story implications of him being there isn't a big deal at all, is what I mean. Like, to me, it's just like, who cares? Because it's not...
I mean, there's so many different things they could have done. I mean, his remains, like Frieza from Dragon Ball Z or something, where his remains or his corpse was somehow survived the explosion or something when Zebes blew up, and then the Federation found it, and then they cloned him. I don't know. There's so many different ways you could do it. And
I mean, like...
You didn't have to do Little Birdie.
How many times has this guy come back from life? I have no problem with him showing up in Fusion, but I do want to... I think that I'm going to keep the Little Birdie concept, because I think that it's... Again, maybe it's because I just watched Alien, but I think that it's, like, a cool concept, where I think that it's pretty critical that you, like, make the design different.
Yes.
Like, the Ridley in this game looked too much like Ridley, but not enough like Ridley, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that you need to make a clearly mutated, monstrous version that, like, sort of maybe resembles Ridley, but not really, Could you do something with Ridley where it becomes a little bit like Alien Isolation, where he stalks you around the bottle ship? That would be kind of engaging. That would be kind of cool. I don't hate that. Yeah, that's not a bad idea. Okay, I had something else for Ridley that I'll tell you, but I don't hate that at all, actually. All right, so I said that there were two things that happened. So in the next 6 hours of gameplay, we're gonna see some Little Birdie cutscenes and watch its evolution. We're gonna hold off on, like, the full reveal of Xeno Ridley, but the other thing that we're going to see is cutscenes of the Deleter killing off members of the platoon. And the Deleter can be, like, disguised somehow. Like, it's a humanoid figure, but it's clearly they're disguised in some way, some fashion. So we can see those quick moments where the Deleter just, like, pew,
would you even need it? Would you even need to have a cutscene, though? You could just be walking along the bottle ship and then you find a corpse.
I think a cutscene would be good. Like, but I'm talking about the kind of cutscene where, like, you don't have to see the actual kill, but, like, you can watch and then see the Deleter sneak up behind Lyle or something like that, and then, like, it cuts away and you can find Lyle and he's like, he's been shot or something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like you don't need to graphically see it, but you see it like implied.
Okay.
Now,
okay. Yep.
while all this is, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No. I agree. Yep.
So while all this is going on, I think that I would go and use a very proud video game trope and tradition to kind of help along the story here. And I would hide voice logs around the bottle ship and maybe even video logs.
Yes.
And the voice logs will all belong to Madeline Bergman. And she is she's the big cheese on this ship. And she can talk about the Little Birdie experiment. She can give us insight as to what it is. She can talk about the goal of the bottle ship, which is to replicate the space pirate weaponry and use it against them. And she can even hint at having mysterious benefactors. So we're going to get to know Madeline Bergman a little bit more in here. We're going to find out a little bit more about the bottle ship. The voice logs, yeah, again, it's a little bit old hat, but I think that they work for a reason, and I think that they would help out in telling this story a lot.
I agree. I actually think voice logs or audio logs would be, if you implement them right, they could actually be good in a Metroid game, particularly one that's focused on isolation, and you can be, and it can be optional, right? It's not force-fed, so you can choose to watch the video logs or listen to the audio logs and get some more of the story.
I think of a game like BioShock.
Yes.
And how effective those were in BioShock. There's no reason those can't be as effective in Metroid other M.
Yes.
So, yeah. So, okay, so we've got a couple cutscenes of Little Birdie evolving. We've got a couple cutscenes of the deleter killing off. Let's say the deleter kills off every single person except for Adam and Anthony. And we've got some voice logs, maybe video logs with Madeline Bergman giving us a little bit of insight into what is really happening at the bottle ship. So we can skip ahead a little bit, and now we're going to get back to Adam. And Samus is going to confront Adam. And it's finally time for Adam to spill the beans about what the heck is going on and what his mission is. So Adam says that his mission is to investigate the bottle ship to obtain proof of this bioweapon project. The bottle ship is owned by a subdivision of the Galactic Federation called, and this is just a name I picked out of a hat, Splinter Cell, because they're a bad Splinter Cell of the. Okay, we can work on. I was trying to think of like a cool alien reference name, but I couldn't, so I was like, whatever, Splinter Cell's fine. So we'll rename it later. Damn it! So the bottle ship is owned by Splinter Cell, a science division of the Galactic Federation Army, and the Galactic Federation proper suspects them of foul play and using bioweapons. So they've sent Adam to investigate. So what this does, Kiwi, is I think that there was a lot of like really big confusion about the Galactic Federation and Other M, and like, why would Samus trust them and why would she not know about them? And like, I think there was that video that went around, like the Other M that never was, where they kind of try and translate the fact that like maybe it was a subsection of the Galactic Federation. Whatever. We're going to make it very clear that the Galactic Federation and the Splinter Cell faction are separate entities. They're within the general umbrella of the Galactic Federation, but Splinter Cell is the main bad guys here that are working on the bottle ship. The bottle ship is theirs. So I think it's very, very important to make that distinction.
Okay. Sorry, I'm just trying not to laugh at Splinter Cell. It's just... Anyway, keep going.
It's not the best. It's not the best. Are you down with that so far, by the way? Just to like,
Yep.
I know that a lot of people kind of, rip on the Galactic Federation plot. Do you think that like clearly saying that it's a separate entity helps?
Yeah, I think there needs to be a definite answer to it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So like I said, we've had the voice logs and stuff like that with Madeline Bergman, and she's explaining about her role, and we can learn a little bit more about Splinter Cell as we get more voice logs. And their main aim was to replicate the weapons of the space pirates, which includes trying to recreate bosses or species like Ridley, Fantoon, and even Mother Brain herself. So we're gonna get up to the Ridley fight. We're at that point of the game now where we're in the pyrosphere and the Ridley fight should be happening, but in my game, it doesn't happen here. In my game, I switch the Ridley fight and the Phantoon fight, or at least I make the Phantoon fight happen earlier. So in the Pyrosphere, you're going to have an awesome battle with Phantoon, and the anticipation for Samus fighting this, monstrous version of Ridley keeps growing. And you can even see like the final metamorphosis if you want to at the end of this Phantoon fight, and you can finally see Xeno Ridley for the first time. But we're not going to give away that fight just yet. We're going to switch it and put Phantoon here instead.
Okay. I'm down with that.
So, let's talk about this Ridley fight. So many, including myself, by the way, think that like the Samus just freezing when she sees Ridley and Other M was one of the worst parts of the game. And like I said, I think that the general sentiment behind it was okay. Finally seeing this enemy that you thought was defeated forever and ever and ever. But the execution was really bad. So I think that the rationale behind switching this is, you can fight Phantoon, and once you're done, then Xeno Ridley will show up, and you've had this wicked fight against Phantoon. You're barely standing, and Xeno Ridley has just finished metamorphizing, and it's this monstrous Ridley alien creature. Samus can be terrified and distraught. I have no problem with that, but I do want her to be like, if anyone can take this thing down, I can. And Xeno Ridley can easily defeat Samus, because Samus is easy prey after this Phantoon fight. And the only thing that saves Samus's life is a well-timed save from Anthony. I think that, like, being afraid but confronting your fear and fighting this battle, even though you know you're going to lose, is so much more in tune with the Samus that we know. Would you agree with that?
I don't know about the whole scared thing. I don't know. And like watching Samus in Dread with Kraid, it's just, it doesn't sync up in my mind with the character. I think even if she was going to die, she'd still stand her ground.
Yeah,
I think you'd be able to convey it pretty well through body language. None of this cutscene with like a little girl or anything. Like that's just not necessary.
Imagine the opening cutscene with Ravenbeak, where like Samus is clearly outmatched, and I think that's the kind of vibe that I would try and replicate with this Xeno Ridley fight.
Yeah, you could do it that way. You could do it that way.
I really don't have a problem with her being like, oh my god, like this is like the worst timing ever, but I'm gonna go down with a bang, even if I have to go down, and I'm gonna face my fears. Like I don't have a problem with that. I don't think that Samus as a character should never show fear, but I think that what makes her a great hero is like she keeps going in spite of that fear. So I kind of want to have that kind of vibe going on in this fight here.
Yeah, well, she shows her fear in the Ravenbeak stuff in Dread,
right?
And it's done very well, right? But yeah, you just can't do Other M's the other side of the spectrum, where it's like, this is totally wrong in every way.
Well, and that's the tough part about this too, because like you've got the Other M stink that's all you can picture, right? Like it's hard to picture this done in a way that doesn't like, that's not bad, because Other M was so bad.
Well, the other problem is it seems to me that they were clearly not catering to the Metroid Prime trilogy as well. Like it's not canon to them. And it's like, well, Samus has already fought this guy multiple times. Not this guy, there's a dragon, multiple times now. So why would she react that way? It doesn't really make much sense. And you have to, so it's... And I think they nailed Samus's character perfectly in Dread. Perfectly.
I don't mind a little bit more vulnerability for Samus. I really don't.
Well, you do see Samus's vulnerability in Dread as well. That's the thing. Like the stuff with Ravenbeak.
I guess I wouldn't mind even a little bit more, but I can see what you're saying.
You got to be so careful. You got to be so careful how you walk that line. It's a very it's got to be done right. It's a very fine line to walk.
Well, and that's kind of what I'm saying. Like we're gonna assume that this is written right, which is probably a tall assumption. But I mean, you can say that about any game. Like if the writing isn't right, like everything falls apart. It doesn't matter how good your premise is.
Oh yeah, well, like let's take dialogue out of the equation for a second, and you just use body language, right? You don't even show her face. You can just see the helmet and her in the suit. There'd still be a way to convey it. You could convey fear.
Imagine that you see her eyes just like go wide at seeing this like Ridley, and then all of a sudden she squints and like gets that look on her face where it's like, all right, let's do it.
Well,
Like, that would be awesome.
even the what is it? The Ridley reveal in Smash Brothers, right? Like I thought that was all good.
Yeah.
Yep. How Ridley just pops
Yeah.
up, and then
Oh,
and then
yeah.
it shows Samus's eyes and wide open, and then Ridley's attacking, and then what does he do? He flips the Mario hat. Yeah, but you could do something like that.
So there is a way to do this properly.
Yes.
There is a way. It can be done.
It can be done.
We just need to make sure that we do it. But anyway, so Anthony saves Samus, and Samus lives to see another day. So Anthony and Samus are together now, and they're going to stick together here for just a second. And eventually, they meet up with Madeline Bergman, who explains that the existence of Splinter Cell and what they were working on. So Madeline reveals that the Space Pirates and Splinter Cell are in league with each other. And Splinter Cell is making bioweapons, both for the Galactic Federation, but also for the Pirates, whose leadership and artillery have been decimated after the events of Super Metroid. And Madeline also reveals that Adam Malkovich is the deleter and knew about these experiments. And Samus places Madeline under arrest and asks Anthony to stay with her, and she's going to go find Adam and get to the bottom of this. So one thing that I want to fix right here, right away, is I want to make Madeline a clearly villainous character, because I feel like Metroid Other M was very wishy-washy on, is Madeline a good guy, a bad guy? Like, what is she? And in my game, she's going to be an antagonistic character that really only cares about her research and stuff like that. So she is clearly going to be a villain. And should I spoil a part for you, or should I just keep going?
No, you can. Well, whatever you feel.
Okay, it's okay. I won't spoil it, but yeah. So the Space Pirates and Splinter Cell are in league, and Splinter Cell and the Galactic Federation are also in league. So this Splinter Cell group is kind of like a double agent here that is aiming to help both the Galactic Federation and the Space Pirates. So we've got Adam potentially as the deleter, and this is actually a subplot of Other M that I liked, where they teased that Adam was in fact the bad guy, and I think that, again, I liked the premise of that. Just the payoff was garbage. So I think I'm going to take another stab at it. What do you think so far with this? Are you still with me?
It depends on what the spoiler territory is. So you'll have to keep going, and then I can come back to it and be like, yeah or nah.
Okay, all the pressure. We're getting into the home stretch here, so this is where the pressure ramps up. Here we go. Samus will work her way through the bottle ship, eventually stumbling across Sector 0, where she learns a terrible secret. Splinter Cell is working on 2 joint projects, a Metroid breeding program and an AI program that can control the Metroids in the same fashion that Mother Brain did. The bottle ship houses the AI program, while the breeding program is on another ship, which, spoilers, is the BSL. So, I want to do this just to make it very clear that, because I think that a lot of people complain that Other M's plot of having a Metroid breeding program is kind of a ripoff of Fusion, and it is. It's very derivative, so I at least want to explain why there might be some overlap and similarities, and try and explain that away a little bit. I don't know how successful I am in that with my joint projects here, but I think that that's probably the best that you can do in the framework of this. And it's also worth noting that there is not going to be a Metroid in sight in my Other M game. So, yeah, that's where we're at. I know that that's a little bit flimsy, I admit, but I think the framework really kind of ties you down there.
Okay. All right. We'll go with that. I would personally prefer that you write the entire third act again and just completely change it.
Okay, well, you're right.
But anyway, keep going.
Okay, it's changed. So, we are in Sector 0, and now Adam confronts Samus in Sector 0, and he admits that he had suspicions about what was going on at the bottle ship. He was involved in some kind of experiment where he and other high-ranking Galactic Federation officials had artificial intelligence programs created based on their personalities. He had a bad feeling about it and set out to find out what was happening, which led him to the bottle ship. Samus and Adam learn of an advanced AI codenamed MB, who was modeled after Mother Brain, but put into the body of an android that was an identical body to Madeline Bergman. They learn that this AI developed a personality and sees camera footage of MB killing Madeline Bergman and the rest of the officials on the bottle ship. So Samus now realizes that the Madeline that they were talking to earlier is in fact MB and has been the deleter this whole time.
Ooh.
There we go. So I'm streamlining the deleter storyline and the MB reveal because I feel like those work better if they're just one and the same. I really do, because like I said, there was no payoff to the deleter storyline. It was just dropped when you introduced MB. And at least at this point, we can establish that like MB just like clearly went nuts and killed everybody on the ship. So she is the only survivor. To me, it was like unfathomable that Madeline Bergman was like kept in a cell in Metroid Other M and still alive somehow. I didn't buy that at all.
Yeah, I don't even remember that part. That's how terrible it was. Yeah, okay, well, we can go with this. We just have to make sure that MB has access to the same Federation attire that all the others wear, if this person's going around and just killing off the team.
She can like... So I think that this is a little bit more in-depth, but I think that she could have that access, but also like she's an artificial intelligence, so she's kind of got like control of the ship too. So maybe you could do some like creative kills where like she moves the ship or something like that. I don't know. I didn't really think about it that far, but
okay.
Once we're gonna cut to a scene here that's gonna break your heart. Are you ready for
Yep.
this? So, since we now know that Madeline, quote unquote Madeline, is actually this evil android MB, Samus and Adam learn a horrible truth. They left MB alone with Anthony, and so we're going to cut to a scene, and MB is going to easily break out of her restraints, and she is going to kill Anthony. Right there, right then.
Yep.
Boom.
Boom. I think that's great as an emotional beat. Yes.
I think it is too, because I think almost to a person, I feel like everybody says that like, while Other M maybe wasn't the best, I don't know anybody that doesn't like Anthony. I thought he was one of the best parts of that game. Maybe the best part. And to see him go, that gives heat to MB. That kind of ups her villainous, I feel like.
Yep. Totally.
So, here we go. And I'm about to fix another big schmozzle of Other M right here. So, upon realizing this, Samus and Adam are trying to race out of Sector 0 because they know that Anthony is in trouble. But they are ambushed by none other than Xeno Ridley. So we are going to have a monstrous boss fight with Xeno Ridley. And that was one of the true crimes that this game committed, was that you never got to fight Ridley again after the game was teasing and building up to it so much. He was just killed off by the Queen Metroid. So we're going to have that fight, and we're also going to have it in Sector 0, which we also never got to visit in the original Other M. So we're kind of killing off a couple birds with one stone here, and we're going to kill off a third bird here. So after the fight, realizing that Xeno Ridley is basically unbeatable. So after the fight, Ridley is down but not out. He's clearly not defeated, but he's just stunned for a moment. Samus is going to talk to Adam, and Adam is going to order her out of Sector 0. He's going to stay behind, and he is going to, whatever he does, like detach the Sector 0 from the ship, and it's going to explode, which is a much, much, much better death than the one that he got in the actual Other M game, where he shot Samus in the back and went into the Sector 0 or whatever. Like, I thought that was garbage. This, I think, is cool. Like, they're battling this monster that they know that they have to defeat. They know that they can't beat him, and the only way is to banish him to the vacuum of space. So we have a good death for Adam here, and a good death for the Xeno Ridley after an awesome fight.
Okay. So how does Ridley end up on BSL then?
I don't know, and frankly, I don't care. I just don't think that that's a big deal at all. Like, maybe there's another Little Birdie that's on that ship.
The thing is, if it's not really a big deal in terms of that, but if Ridley's on the BSL and Adam's not on the BSL, it's kind of weird.
I really don't think it's a big deal that he ends up on the BSL, because like, how many times did this guy come back to life? You know, like, how many like different mecha versions of him are there? Like
I know.
I
But
don't
the
know.
whole point he's even in Other M is because of that reason. That's the thing. They had to shoehorn him in to connect the dots. So,
but that it still doesn't really connect the dots. How he's in? I guess they could have went to the bottle ship and took him off and put him on the BSL. I feel like that's just like such a small, like, who cares kind of a detail that like you could just come up with any reason. I feel like, yeah, like, how was he in the BSL? They had a second Little Birdie. How about that?
okay. Well, and hey, with
like,
that
that
being
works for
said,
me.
they don't really explain how Kraid got to ZDR.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So to me, I'm just like, whatever. Like, who cares?
Okay. All right.
Okay. So Xeno Ridley is gone. Adam is dead. Anthony is dead. There are no survivors right now from the from Adam's strike team. Everyone is gone. And Samus will go and meet up with MB. And after saying that MB is going to have like a little bit of a monologue here, she can say that she resents her creators and that's why she wanted to destroy them. Whatever. Samus and MB have an incredible boss battle where, you know, MB, I feel like, can use like the bottle ship's artillery to also fight against Samus because she is an AI. I think that you can have like a wicked boss battle using that, which is another sin of Other M, is that you don't get to fight MB. You have that like really weird final boss battle where you're like stuck and she's stuck in one place and there's all these Galactic Federation guys in there and like you have to shoot her in the head. Do you remember that?
Vaguely, yeah.
It was like super weird, and it wasn't really a boss battle, but it was the last playable thing that you did in the game. It just sucked. So like, we're gonna have like a legit boss battle here, like a real battle, Samus versus MB, and Samus is going to destroy the android body, but realizes that she needs to destroy the bottle ship to truly eliminate the artificial intelligence that is MB. So Samus can either activate the self-destruct, she can pilot it towards a star, she can, whatever. We'll keep that escape sequence at the end where like she can run out and get to her ship. And we end the game with Samus as the sole survivor. She has no proof of the events of the bottle ship, so she can't take it to the Galactic Federation, but she knows that she needs to keep a very close eye on the Galactic Federation to see how much involvement they knew or they had, how much they knew, and if there's any remnants of the Splinter Cell organization left to weed out. And then you can even throw in a post-game scene where you can see like the restricted zone of the BSL, and that has the Metroid program still, and you can see that same shadowy figure and say, I don't know, something to set up the events of Metroid Fusion. Maybe something about the AI Adam or something like that. But that's where we end. That's where we end. What do you think of Metroid Other M?
Infinitely better. Yes. I will. Well done.
Okay.
Well done.
So, Kiwi, I made a list of quick fixes. What I felt like my story draft fixed here. I'm gonna read them out.
Okay.
The first actual thing is like, we're going to assume the actual dialogue is both written and performed better. If I need to, I will write it out myself.
Well, the thing is,
okay, I don't actually want to do that, but
well, the thing is, you can actually write dialogue and it can be good, but if the voice actor's not directed properly, it's still going to be terrible. Like I don't know who directed the localization actors for the American dialogue, but I mean I don't know. They probably had a combination of bad dialogue, or maybe a bad voice actor, or they were just not good at directing. A voice actor.
I think it's more the directing rather than the talent, because like I felt like Adam was fine. I felt like MB was fine. I mean, really, it was just Samus that was so bad.
Well, her
so
character was written wrong as well. Yeah. I mean, that was just a cacophony of bad things. A perfect storm of...
I don't place the blame on the voice actress. Like, I think that she probably did exactly what she was instructed to do, which, you know, that's tough. But so we got that. So this draft fixes the... I think like one of the biggest sins that Other M does is like constantly sets up boss battles with the Deleter or with Ridley or with MB and never delivers on any. So we're going to fight all three here. I think that we fixed the Ridley scene. in this. We eliminate the chance encounter with Adam and his team, which seemed a little bit far-fetched for my liking. We have one payoff to the Deleter and MB storyline to like kind of weave those two tales together instead of them being separate and a little bit hokey pokey. I don't know how successful this was or not, but I think that at least this tries to not replicate the Metroid Fusion storyline so much and try and make it at least a little bit more complementary. Although I do admit this one was tough within the confines of the premise.
Totally.
It also explains how you got an Adam AI and why it would be uploaded. It establishes the new creature definitively is not Ridley. I think that it allows MB to cast a more reasonable suspicion on Adam because he knows of this AI stuff, and it eliminates any survivors that might testify, I guess if you will, against the Galactic Federation. Because at the end of Other M, you have Anthony and you have Madeline Bergman that are alive and well. So it's like, why did nobody face consequences for this?
Yeah, totally.
So I think that there's a decent list of fixes here.
Yep, I agree. And the thing is, the story, even if the story had been terrible in Other M, if the gameplay had been good, I don't think it would have got as much heat. But when you combine the gameplay with the story, it's just, yeah, it's a major misfire. So at least this is a serviceable story. I can get behind it. Now the execution of it, that's a different thing. The gameplay elements of the game, you'd have to obviously that needs to be completely rewritten or redone, I should say. But that's a podcast for another day.
Yep, I agree. I think you're right. Actually, I think that if the story was good, that people would really look at this fondly. Because I don't think that the gameplay was like that bad. I think that it was kind of awkward at times, but you get used to it. It's not like that. It's not the killer, I don't think, of this game. But conversely, I feel like if this game had like this story, but let's say Metroid Dread's gameplay, you would also look at it a lot more fondly. But yeah, like, to your point, unfortunately, it has neither, and it's just kind of a storm of bad ideas.
Yeah,
I think that this story at least makes it a little bit, I don't know, a little bit better, while, kind of keeping the same general premise. Because, I'll say this until I die. Like, I really do think that this game did have potential. There were a lot of cool themes here. It's just, the execution was bad. Very
bad. And it's even more apparent because Nintendo rarely ever misfires. So when they do, it blows up into this massive thing. And then you combine that with Federation Force after it, and it just makes... And it's just like, it all started here.
Well, I feel like Federation Force was more tone deaf than anything else.
Oh, yeah, that was just wrong place, wrong time, wrong system,
right. If that
wrong
game
graphic
came out
style.
This year,
yeah.
It would be okay.
Yeah, Federation Force, look, it's actually not a bad game. I think if you just released it on the Switch, you'd got rid of the stupid chibi art style, it would have been serviceable. And I don't think people would have gotten angry at it, but it was, it was...
Wrong place, wrong time.
Yep. Totally.
Yeah.
But hey, Metroid's in a good place now thanks to Dread.
All right, so you're buying Metroid Other M. Do we have a final verdict on that?
Yes, based on the story, yes.
Okay, yep. I'll take that.
Yep.
I like it. Well, there you go. That's my story draft. I want everybody to let me know what you think, if you like my premise, if you don't, what you might change, what we could improve, stuff like that. Kiwi, you just had a new podcast come out, didn't you?
Yeah, former Retro Studios guy. He worked there on Donkey Kong Country Returns, Tropical Freeze, and Mario Kart 7. He didn't really mention anything about Metroid because he didn't work on it, but he did go a little into the Metroid Easter eggs in the Donkey Kong games.
Nice.
So, but I still have some more Metroid Prime Retro Studios developers in the pipeline. I just don't want to give any specific people or days or anything because, it's all about scheduling.
There you go. Well, thank you, sir, for coming on and talking Other M with me today. I know it's not what you wanted to talk about, but I told you I was going to get you at the end, so I'm a man of my word. And,
well done.
You should definitely check out Kiwi's YouTube channel. Guys, pumping out interviews that are being covered everywhere. I saw you on Game Explained this morning. They were tweeting at you, and of course IGN, Kotaku. You're a busy man, Kiwi, and you're doing great.
Oh, I appreciate it, and it's all because of you guys. Because I have so much support from the gaming community, the Metroid community especially. So because you guys support it so much, I'm able to do it. Because the more support it gets, the easier it is to leverage that to get guests. Because they see how far it reaches. So you guys are the most important part.
There you go. Check out Kiwi over on YouTube. Subscribe, of course, and check him out over on Twitter at Kiwi Talkz. That is going to do it for this week. We're going to get out of here, and we want you to check us out over on Twitter at Omega Metroid Pod, at Spiteri316, and check out the Omega Metroid Podcast wherever you get your podcast. Like, subscribe, all that jazz. Check out the website. We got walkthroughs, we got guides, we got editorials, we got tons of cool different stuff over there, including all of Kiwi's interviews, by the way, that are hosted on the website. So you definitely need to go check those out if you haven't already. Lots of good information there for Metroid fans to sink their teeth into. Until next week, everybody, take care.